Hi, and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen, and today is NBA trade deadline week. So starting from today, Monday, all the way through to Thursday, we're going to simply be counting down the days and rumors. So stay tuned. So today is Monday, March 22nd, and the rumor mill is churning. So first and foremost, Kyle Lowry, who has been rumored away from the Toronto Raptors for a while, is being brought up as a trade candidate for the Miami Heat and, of course, the Philadelphia 76ers. So let's get into the Sixers first. The Sixers is basically his hometown team. He's from Philly. It would be a homecoming. They've been rumored to be interested in Lowry for a long time. And you know what? It makes sense. One thing is that you have the pairing of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, not to forget Tobias Harris, who plays a huge role on that team, but they could use a proper point guard, someone who facilitates, who plays tough defense, who hits three-pointers, who gets the offense going and moving with the level of energy that someone like Kyle Lowry possesses. Yes, Lowry is a bit on the old side, but it doesn't matter. He's still supremely effective. He's an all-star caliber player, and he is a guy who will win you games in the playoffs, not to mention the regular season as well. He's a winner. It would just not be a bad move by any stretch of the imagination for Philly to get him onto that team. So the big question is, how do you get a guy like Kyle Lowry onto the team knowing full well he's earning over $30 million this season? Well, it starts with Danny Green, who's earning just around $15 million a year on an expiring contract. Then you add in the contracts of Matisse Thybulle, Tyrese Maxey, because that's the value that you give up there. You also have to probably include Mike Scott. You have to include a couple other pieces, as well as the Toronto Raptors would have to include minimum guys. Now, there is a deal to be found here, but it is slightly tricky. And if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, you should also want to make sure that you're not losing too much depth. Although, of course, there's also the buyout market after the trade deadline that you could explore. So for now, just key in on Kyle Lowry, make sure that you retain Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris, and then you're pretty much golden. But yes, in terms of value being given up here, the Raptors will take on Maxey and Thybulle, presumably. Those are the two young assets that the Sixers have to deal. That they have a lot of intrigue around the league, and to get someone like Kyle Lowry and someone of his caliber, you just need to give up that type of asset. You just have to. So those two guys, I have to assume, are on the table in that type of deal. Now, the other team interested in Kyle Lowry is the Miami Heat. They also have a lot of contracts they can move around, including Andre Iguodala. They can also put in guys like Duncan Robinson, who really isn't earning anything, but he's one of those value players, much like in the same vein as Maxey or Thybulle. Doesn't really earn a whole lot, but he's giving you a tremendous amount of production out of what he's earning. So yeah, there's definitely deals to be struck on either side. It just comes down as well to preference for Kyle Lowry, because here's something that we rarely talk about when we talk about the trade market, and that is player needs and certain teams, let's say, willingness to adhere to those needs. Lowry is one of those career Raptors in the sense that he will always be identified as a Toronto Raptor. He's one of the best players in franchise history, so of course, if he's to leave the team now, it will have to be done under circumstances that are positive for both sides. So team president Masai Ujiri is obviously very, very respectful of Lowry's wishes to move on. He wants to compete for a championship. The Raptors just aren't there this year. And at the same time, nobody wants to burn any bridges. So instead of sending Lowry to a place where he might not want to go, you work with Lowry to facilitate a deal that makes sense for all parties included. It becomes just a project that you work on together to find the best possible solution. That means the relationship between Lowry and Toronto stays strong until he retires, and then he can move back in whatever capacity, maybe as an assistant coach in the front office, as a commentary, whatever. Point being, there is a lot of interest in Kyle Lowry, but you also have to make sure that Lowry's wishes are heard. The Raptors Raptors are doing that. I fully expect him to get moved by the trade deadline, and I personally believe he'll end up in Philly. I think there's a deal there that's being worked out. Maybe it's completed on the March 25th trade deadline. Maybe it's completed before. We'll see. Right now, though, I'm fairly confident that's going to happen. And if not, that's going to be a shocker. I just don't see a scenario wherein Lowry remains with the Raptors this year when they're not competitive, at least not to the same extent as the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll see. I don't think Miami is a candidate that is really being considered to the same extent, but I could be wrong. To be fair here, Kyle Lowry also likes the Miami model. He's a hard worker. The Heat are notorious for being hard workers. He has a great relationship with Jimmy Butler as well. There are definitely components that could attract him to that destination, but I think Philly is the more obvious road to go. But look, we'll see. So a couple weeks ago, I posted a video about the top 5 trade targets for the Boston Celtics using their $28 million TPE. You can find the link in the description below. And one of those names was Aaron Gordon. And currently, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, the Celtics and Magic have engaged in trade talks about Aaron Gordon. The Celtics want him on their roster. That makes a lot of sense from where I'm sitting. So yes, we'll see if that actually materializes, because there are other teams interested in Gordon's services. He's only 25, he's on a declining deal, his skill set is vast and has been misused in Orlando for years, so it only makes sense that teams are sniffing around. The Portland Trail Blazers being one, the Houston Rockets, quite surprisingly, are also in on the hunt. That one I just don't get. Like, what's the upside here for Houston? You're trying to tear everything down and kind of tank your way to a good pick. I just really don't comprehend what you're getting in trying to trade for Gordon, who will improve you immediately. But okay, apparently they're offering 2 picks. Look, if you're Orlando, you got to take what you can get. I think it would be best for them to just speak it out with Gordon and figure out a deal that also would fit him. But you know what? That remains to be seen. The Nuggets, that's a team I definitely get, are also interested in his service. Could you imagine him and Nikola Jokic together just running down the court? I mean, good Lord, right? That makes sense to me. So from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing 2 candidates who, at least from an X's and O and on-court perspective, would make a ton of sense for Gordon. The Celtics and the Nuggets. But again, teams just have interest in a guy like him. He can play multiple positions, he can defend multiple positions, meaning a lot of teams could come out over the next coming days and go, you know what? I have interest in him too. We want him on our team as well. Like, the Warriors could be a perfect example, and apparently they have sniffed around as well. He's going to be a big name going into Thursday, and I have this sneaky suspicion that he's probably going to be one of those names that I bring up tomorrow and the day after as well. We'll see. But right now, he's at least one of the most attractive trade pieces on the market due to his skill set, due to his age, due to his contract. I could definitely see a lot of teams coming in and just going, you know what, we could use an Aaron Gordon. He's a new H4, he defends, he can pass, he can shoot. There isn't really that one major weakness in his game, so let's see what we can figure out. It seemed like Chicago, I wouldn't be surprised, came up in trade talks as well. That wouldn't shock me. He kind of fits that mold. Plus, Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon, 2016 slam dunk contest reunited in Chicago. The headlines write themselves, right? Finally, it's time to talk about Lonzo Ball. So just a couple months ago, it was more or less just agreed upon around the NBA sphere that Lonzo was probably not going to stick around with the Pelicans. His contract demands were estimated to be too high. He wasn't delivering on the court to the extent that people thought he would. And presumably, the Pelicans were just looking to unload his contract in order to just avoid the headache of going into restricted free agency with him. That has changed. Ball over the past couple months has just been phenomenal. He's been shooting the 3 at a much higher volume, at a much higher efficiency rate. He's been more assertive offensively, defensively. He's switching and guarding multiple positions. He's looking like a keeper, and that just came out of nowhere. So the Pelicans have suddenly looked at this evolution and gone, should we not be as open-minded as we otherwise were to moving him? Should we actually consider hanging on to him? Of course, there are certain layers that we need to take into consideration here before we actually move on and just kind of label him as a future Pelican, because he is going to be a restricted free agent. Ball did not sign an extension with the Pelicans before the start of the 2020-21 season, meaning by default, he will be a restricted free agent, assuming, of course, they extend him a qualifying offer, which they will. That's just a moot point. Of course, they will. And then you have to kind of gauge the market. What is Lonzo Ball going to get offered by other teams around the NBA come free agency? 16, 18, 20 million a year? If the latter, then of course, New Orleans Pelicans will have some decisions to make. Maybe you're just not interested in paying Ball over $20 million a year. And if that's the case, then yes, you might want to trade him now to get something out of his contract, even if it's just a second round pick. Personally, I think they can do better than that. But you're not going to get full value out of Ball if you decide to trade him, because teams know full well that they can play the restricted free agency market and give him one of those major offer sheets, knowing that the Pelicans are maybe not that enticed to actually pay or match that contract offer. So why would any teams go into that trade negotiations with the Pelicans and offer a tremendous amount of quality for someone who might leave very, very soon? There are a lot of questions here surrounding that situation, but numerous teams are interested in his services, as they should be. He's a tall point guard with great defensive capabilities. He can hit the glass, he can hit the three. There's a lot there. But for the Pelicans, it boils down to basically what is the walkaway number. And if they get some sort of intel over the next couple of days that says that Ball is looking for X amount of dollars and that amount is significantly higher than what they're willing to pay, then I think it's fair to say we can expect a Lonzo Ball trade. There are a lot of offers currently on the table at the Pelicans headquarters right now, and it's just a matter of picking the best one and then getting that situation out of the way. Now, personally, I wouldn't be against retaining Ball if I'm the Pelicans, even if I'm paying $20 million a year, because that contract is still movable. Yeah, sure, you might feel queasy about matching a contract of that order. And yes, the first year he might be an overpay, but he's young, he's productive. That contract will always be movable. And if it means you can get something more from him in a trade circumstance that you can't do now, re-sign him, keep him around for a year or two, maybe even less than that, see what kind of offers you're fielding. And if someone goes in and says, you know what, we want Ball, he's just locked out to a new contract, that means we're willing to pay through the nose for him. You take that offer, you never look back, and then the decision was good. It seemed like the Chicago Bulls have also sniffed around Lonzo Ball for a long time. They could be one of those teams that actually comes in out of nowhere with a major offer, although they, of course, would also have to go in and deal with his whole restricted free agency, and they're also dealing with Lowry Markkinen, and he, ironically, is also one of those guys who could be on the trade block. Maybe there's a swap there where the Bulls attach a couple extra draft picks, maybe second rounders, future second rounders, whatever the deal might be. There are definitely some components here that could work. Ultimately, though, these three names, Kyle Lowry, Aaron Gordon, and Lonzo Ball, are going to be permanent names that we're going to be hearing about over the next 3 days. They are going to be headliners because they are the most obvious trade candidates to get moved because of their respective situations. So I have to assume that they will be on everybody's mind over the next couple days at the very least. And finally, on Thursday, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., I'm conducting a live 3-hour stream with a guest, maybe even a couple of guests, covering the trade deadline live right here on this channel. So stay tuned for more info on that.